again, everyone. Welcome back. My name is Janelle Opodi. I'm a writer and fashion journalist, and I'm incredibly excited about this next conversation, and I know that you guys are going to be too. It's about how do we hone the power of social media for our brands, for our personal lives, and just in general. Now, we're going to dive into this with women who have already done this so successfully. So please, okay. Can you hear me?
All
right.
All
right. So please join me in welcoming the influencers, experts, and business owners who have truly done just that and are using social media in the most creative and expressive ways. Welcome to the stage, Josephine Scriver, Yvette, Raquel Natasha, and Erica Gorin. Josephine is a model and content creator who has walked countless runways since she made her runway debut back in 2011. And she has amassed an impressive audience on social media of over 8.2 million followers. Okay. She is the co-founder of Joja, an activewear brand, an online community dedicated to sharing workouts and health routines with like-minded followers. Next, we have Yvette XO, an entrepreneur, co-founder of two clothing brands, Active Faith and Yvette XO, as well as being the CEO of her own cosmetics brand, EXO Cosmetics. Yvette boasts over 3.6 million followers on social media, where she shares her days as a mom, as a business owner, as well as her favorite beauty products and go-to fashion picks. Then we have the lovely Raquel Natasha, who is Betancourt, who is an influencer, content creator, and model. She gained a global fan base when she started posting fashion and travel content on Instagram in 2014. In 2020, she became a CEO upon launching her luxury swim line, Ahasia Swimwear. Last but certainly not least is Erica Gorin, who is the current director of social for SHEIN. Previously, she worked at L'Oreal, Snapchat, and Hulu. This is an incredible, wonderful woman. Please give them a hand. Okay, I'm gonna get right into it. Okay, guys. I'm gonna start with the one thing that I think a lot of designers, brand owners, people in general struggle with. How did you develop and grow a social media following? Now, this question is for everybody here on the panel, because I know that you guys each have a very different experience with social. So I'd love to know how you got started using social media and how you developed your following over time.
I mean, for me, it was, it's been 10 years now, which is crazy. I don't think anyone thought social media was going to be as industry important and as brand important as it is now. So, I mean, if you scroll down to my very, very early Instagram, it had these weird frames and filters, and you're just kind of having fun. And my friends were like, do that selfie thing. And I'm like, what is this thing? Gonna make me sound really old, but it was just like a fun space for me. I just had fun with it. So this was like 2013, I think I started.
14. I started around the same time. I had a fashion blog, so a website when people were actually reading blogs, so I started there, and then I started to move everything over to Instagram around 2014. And it just kind of picked up from there.
Yeah, my experience was very similar to that too. I think we all kind of went in there for fun, and it just kind of happened. But I also started maybe like 10 years ago, and it was just posting selfies, and people started asking questions like what lipstick you're wearing or what shirt you're wearing, and it kind of just took off from there.
Wow.
I mean, God, it's been crazy just to see how social media has evolved from 10 years ago, where we are now, and, looking at Snapchat filters to now just trying to be as real as possible. So just being at the forefront of that and seeing how that grows, it's been huge.
Awesome. Now, for people who are just starting, what was the best piece of advice that you guys could give them in terms of how do you get the attention of an audience?
Probably authenticity, just staying true to yourself. And I feel like it's a little bit more saturated now where we're finding it a little bit more difficult to grow, but definitely staying true to yourself, because overall, what you might be able to offer somebody is not what somebody else is offering someone else. So you're always going to be able to stand out in that crowd.
I also think it's really important to find your niche. Like, if you're just sharing everything at all times, there's not really like a guideline or a reason. Now I feel like followers or communities want like a reason, like what are you actually offering? So I've always looked at like boxes. For me, it's like you can have 2, you can have 3, I have 5 that I usually rotate between. So like even with the days I'm like, I don't know what to post about, I kind of go back to like my default setting. Okay, I post about fashion. Okay, I post about, sport. I post about, so find your niche where you feel strong in that, but be authentic to you and your reality. Because if you have to like fake it to make it, then it's like, it doesn't really work on social media the same way.
And consistency, I think, is like one of the biggest ones. I know I should take my own advice sometimes. It's really hard to stay consistent, but I feel like, posting at least once a day or even twice a day sometimes is just so important, along with being authentic and, finding your niche and being consistent, I think.
Yeah, because the algorithms really punish you if you don't are consistent always. They want you to be on there all the time, as much as that can sound like a lot. It really is just, I think it's looking at it as part of your job or part of your everyday life. Like, okay, you wake up, what's like part of your morning routine? Well, it's either get ready, make content, or have something to share. It really has to be an extension of your brand at this point.
And I think more than anything, too, is like testing and learning, because, you get to kind of see, what is my audience like and what do they engage with, and then continue.
Amazing. Now, as you guys all started, right before social media was completely saturated, when did it become intentional for you guys? When did it become like, okay, this is something serious that I can actually use as a business?
For me, it was the first time, like I've been modeling for over a decade now, and you used to be able to you had to walk around to clients, knock on their door, and basically show them this book of what you've done. Like, it was very old school. And I would walk around to 20 different people a day just in the hopes of getting a job. And I remember the first time I sit down and they're like, no, I don't need to see your book. Can you pull your phone out? And I was like, what do you mean my phone? They're like, yeah, can I see your feed? And that's when I was like, oh, it's not just my mom and my friends looking. It's actually the industry is keeping an eye on it. And that really pivoted my whole way of thinking. And I was like, oh, I really have to maybe think about what I put out there. And it just, from there on, I could just see such a change in the industry, what they perceive, what they see, and then brands. It's been the last 5 years, I would say, people really sell and do things, and you can really curate for brands now on there.
Right. Yeah, I think in the beginning for us, I remember me having conversations and people actually well, what is it that you do? Or that's fun, that's a nice hobby, or oh, that's cute, you just talked, online to people. And I feel like it was that transition when people actually started noticing oh, this is what you're doing, or this is actually creating an income for you, or it's becoming an actual job. That transition has been even a little still till this day, because now when I say, oh, I am on social media, you kind of have a little bit more respect, as opposed to before it was a cute hobby before it. Now it's oh, okay, you're an influencer, it's actually a job. So that was definitely the transition for me.
I think it was around 2015 or 16, I actually got hired by guests to create content for their social media. So I was posting guests, and then they actually hired me to create content for their social media and their website. So I do a lot of content creation for brands where I actually don't post on my own platform. I create for them so that they can use. And that, I think, was the pivotal moment for me, where I was like, okay, this is turning into a business. And it was about 2015 or 2016. Wow. And that was one of the biggest companies that I worked with back then, and that's just kind of how it kept going. That's why I was like, okay, this is this is crazy. This is a big brand, and I have to make it a full-time business.
Okay, now, what are some things you guys wish that you knew before you got on social?
That the internet is forever.
Yeah.
Probably for me, just taking that leap of faith of understanding that it was actually real. I had a normal, corporate 9 to 5, and I feel taking that step of okay, I'm committing and I'm gonna do this full time, and this is the risk that I'm taking, that kind of did it for me.
I think the same for me, that it was going to be almost full-time 24/7, and I wish I knew that there was going to be a lot of anxiety that came with being on social media all the time. And like, I think the mental health thing for me, I wish I knew. It's just kind of like I've been doing it for so long now that you're just, kind of not stuck, but I wish I knew that there was just so much. It's all evolving and developing, and I think the mental health.
It's because you do it from the moment you,
You
wake up to
yeah.
the moment you go to sleep. Like there's just no time.
And you're just consumed in it,
Yeah.
24/7. Sometimes you don't even realize it. So I wish I knew that we would be so sucked in. Like, it's hard to separate real life and.
But I think that's why, for me, it's been really important to have certain like lines that I don't cross for myself.
For sure.
And for me, it's like I chose to be on there. I chose to be online. My family or friends did not. So for me, the clear line is, yes, I am exposing myself to this. I understand the consequences, but like, as much as my mom wants to be like a public profile and like tag me, I'm like, you don't get it. That's not the consequences you want in there.
Yeah.
I think it's also knowing when to take a break, too. And I think like that's something that I wish I knew, and sometimes I have to remind myself as well. Like I'll have my phone out, and my husband will be like, "Again?" And I'm, and it's just like sometimes you're so sucked in and you're so drawn into what's happening in that world. You also have to live in the present world too.
Yeah, it gives you almost like an adrenaline rush, especially when you can be like creative too. So yeah, it's creating those boundaries like with the platform.
But also when you like love something so much, you don't even realize that you're consumed so much in it. I know with me, it's so hard to shut off because I feel like there's always an idea. There's always something that I could be doing. There's always something that like I'm trying to do. So it's really hard for me personally to just kind of like not be thinking about it because it's something that I genuinely do enjoy. Even though it can be draining, I love it so much.
That's why it's good to have like friends or family sometime and listen when they say, "Hey, I'm also like, can we?"
Pay attention to me.
Like for me, it's helped a lot to like compartmentalize the hours, like almost like look at it as work sometimes in the sense as much as
Schedule.
Yeah, as much as fun. Like, oh, but on this day I'll book the whole day out to like do all these different scenarios. So like that give me like time or. Not panic about not capturing a moment. Like if you're on vacation, you're having fun, you're like, oh my God, this would be so great for social, this would be beautiful, and you forget to actually experience the moment. Like, yeah, give yourself 2 minutes, take the picture. If you get it, cool. If you get the TikTok, dope. If not, move on. Yeah. Like it's not the end of the world. It's worse to miss out on like life.
We're not saving lives, is what I like to bring it in, reel it in.
Well, since it's something that you guys all started out coming from a place of love, coming from a place of, this is something that you enjoy personally, when did you decide, okay, I want to make this a brand. I want to actually have a brand that is on social as well. How did that sort of realization come to each of you?
For me, it was like I've, again, worked in the modeling industry, and I've kind of been a hanger my whole life. I didn't have like much of a say. I just showed up, and I was the face of everybody else's brand. Where the social media was the only way I could show me or show this behind the scenes of what I did when I wasn't working. So I had a lot of fun with showing what the fashion industry is about when you're not just on a runway, when you're not just on a poster super edited, and like I could walk around. But it also like was weird because I signed up for this anonymous industry that nobody really knew you were a model. Like people don't really like, now it's like blasted all over. But I liked taking that charge, and I felt like it helped me take charge of my own career because I could be like, show what my hobbies are. I could show what I care about. I can show and that made sense because all of a sudden brands see what you actually care about, and then the collaboration with other brands made a lot more sense because they were authentic to you and not just like, oh, your look like you could fit. But I actually have an interest now in what the brand is.
It's you as a person versus you as a model.
I prefer it a lot more. I think it's a lot more fun having somewhat of a say in things.
Definitely.
I mean, I feel like it's also like your own brand. And I think that's like the most amazing part of all the platforms is that you can create that yourself and no one's telling you what it has to be like.
With me, I definitely feel like it's also longevity, just knowing that I have something to also build and fall back on as well. I feel like when I first started, I wasn't sure how far it was going to take me or how long I was going to do it for. If I wanted to step back and not just do the social media stuff, I could. So by building a brand, I felt like that was going to be my outlet to the day that I decide, like, okay, I don't want to do social media anymore. I still have my brand to kind of fall back on and still do what I love and still enjoy what I'm doing.
Yeah, I think for me, when I really love travel and fashion, so it was just building my brand on like what I love to do and what I think I would want to see. So,
Amazing. Now, how do you sort of get to the point where you're building a brand identity? You know, you have your brand. How do you decide, okay, this is how I want to represent myself online. This is what I want to sort of, you know, be in terms of the public perception of who I am, and this is how I'm going to use social media in order to do it. So, Josephine.
I mean, it was definitely a pivotal switch of being like just a person who posts and then looking at yourself almost from the outside and be like, okay, if like you have a brand, I have a brand as well, but being your own brand, you kind of have to look at it the same way. You have to look at it critically. You have to be like, what do I stand up for? What do I not? What is my values? What do I bring to the table? What are the conversation I shouldn't be part of? And what are the conversation? And then take you to just take your stance on certain things and or decide not to. So for me, it was like a very like internal like marketing conversation with myself and like almost looking at like a product and like I know I've been a product my whole life. Like I'm a model, been a hanger. So my mom always said this thing when I was younger because it was kind of weird being judged for my looks. Every time you get a no, it felt so personal. And she was like, well, think about this. Your shampoo. And I was like, where are you going with this? But everybody has different hair types. Somebody wants it foamy, somebody wants it fruity, somebody wants it for, you know, hair coloring, somebody wants natural. That doesn't mean any of those shampoo are bad, they're just not the right fit. So for me, it's like I was trying to figure out what shampoo on the shelf am I and stick to that. So I could also attract the right kind of clients. So when you're true to your own brand and you stick and you figure it out, and it doesn't come overnight. It's not like I'm expecting everybody to know exactly, like if I hand the mic over, what's your brand? But if you have this internal conversation with yourself, like your value, and kind of like step it back a little bit and look at it as yourself as a product, it really helped me.
yeah, I think it's just something that happens over time too, and you just figure it out. It's not like something that you like come up with overnight, and you just kind of test the waters and what you are authentic to, you know?
And also just knowing your audience, I feel like you want to be able to come out with a product that is going to make sense. Like me, I started in the fashion beauty industry, so I wouldn't necessarily start like a cooking, you know, wear brand or anything like that. And if questions are being asked, I'm gonna know that I'm gonna know the answer to it, and I'm not just doing it for the money or to start a business or start a brand, but because one, I genuinely love it and I'm good at it, and I know that I can actually come out with a good product because it's something that I'm comfortable with.
Yeah, you kind of see like what your audience is like drawn to and what they're really loving, and then that's when you kind of build your brand identity and focus on that.
But sometimes you can also get audience like you didn't necessarily ask for. So there's also like that, like for me, transitioning from like modeling to brand, I mean, I was an underwear model for a long time, so like definitely have more male followers than I expected, which makes sense. Yeah. But for me, it's like having to pivot and like still deciding to talk mainly to my female followers also is kind of like, can feel like a setback at times because you're not catering. So it's also like you want to cater to the followers you want, not necessarily always to the ones you have, because they might not be right for where you want to take either your personal brand or the brand you're coming out with. There's so many things to it. So again, knowing what your product is, I think is more important than necessarily always following what your audience wants. Because there's a huge difference. There was, when I came out with my fitness brand, there's a huge difference in who our customer was and who our community was. There's a great overlap, but there's definitely also surprisingly a data we weren't, like there was full customers we weren't like aware of was there because our community was a lot younger, and we surprisingly had also an older audience in like our actual customer. So that surprised us because we like fully went the first campaign going like, oh, we're gonna go for like younger this is our demographic, and then we realized.
And it pivoted.
Yeah.
And sometimes you learn from that too.
Yeah.
So like sometimes you'll push out a product that not necessarily hits the audience that you typically have, but then you reach a different audience and you're like, oh my God, like now I have another audience and I can tap into that as well. So that's, from the brand perspective, like we're always thinking, how can we experiment too? Like maybe there's something that hasn't been done before, and that might be a surprise and delight for our audience and maybe new people as well.
No, I mean, Erica, from a business perspective, like what are some best practices that, young designers can use to really shape, their brands on social?
I think like the biggest bottom line is there's no one way for anybody. Like, there's not like one size meets all. Everybody has a unique voice, and I think it's tapping into that and what makes you special. And you know yourself better than anybody else does, and I think it's highlighting that. And I think once you know what that is, and once you know what resonates with your audience and just staying true to yourself, that makes much stronger, I would say, best practice by each platform. And again, like each platform has a different type of audience. So, Facebook is generally an older demographic, Snapchat very young, Instagram is probably a millennial like myself, and then TikTok, that's where you can have a lot of fun. So I think everybody is on TikTok, but it's all up to you.
Okay. I mean, do you guys see a big difference in terms of your follower groups based on the platform?
Yeah, I feel like even with the platforms, I don't know if any of you guys feel like this, but I definitely feel like I also have like different vibes for each platform. Like when I think about my Instagram, it's kind of like put together a little bit more, but my TikTok just seems like I show my personality a bit more, just like I would on YouTube. So I think it's just definitely also learning the platform and the audience that's on the platform for you to be able to really just be who you are on there. But I've noticed that with the new platforms that I have been on, that I kind of like am a little more particular, like, okay, maybe I shouldn't post that on Instagram, but like it's totally okay for me to put it on TikTok. But I think it's just learning that specific platform.
I think that's like key too, is that content on a certain platform does not belong across the board.
Yeah.
So it's being very specific to each audience and each platform.
And I've noticed too, even with when I try to like, it's great to recycle obviously your content and everything because you want to be able to do that. But anytime I post something on TikTok, it makes sense. But then the moment I post it on Instagram, everyone's kind of like, oh, what is this? Or why did you post that? Or it's like a little cringy, or like it just, you have to learn the platform that you're
Do you find
on.
that Instagram's like more curated and
It's just more like you want it to look perfect,
Yeah.
as opposed to like on TikTok, like I can wake up without makeup. On my YouTube, I can wake up
I
without
feel like
makeup.
it's pivoting though.
Yeah,
it's
for
pivoting
sure.
a little bit more into the reels.
It's starting
like,
to, because like with Reels now,
Yeah.
I feel like it's in order for it to still continue to be a good platform, I feel like they're starting to now be a little bit more like, okay, like I'm starting to understand it, but I personally, because I've been doing it for so long, I feel like that transition's been a little bit more harder for me to just actually me not cringe when I'm looking at it. I'm like, okay, maybe I shouldn't, but just learning the platforms and just actually knowing what you're wanting to do in each one, because at the end of the day, they're also different. I don't know, like it's like a different audience too that you're kind of gravitating towards.
I mean, one of the things I love about your content is that your entire family is there, and they sneak peek in some of the content. How do you navigate that?
I mean, my whole life has been on social media. It might be a little bit different from your guys' experience, but I've started and I share everything. And I feel like that's been a little harder for me to transition because I'm not just a brand. I'm kind of like, I had a lot of my audience based off of showing everything. Like I've showed mom life, I've showed my struggles, I've showed it's been very raw. I don't do a lot of the perfect editing or anything like that. So navigating it's more difficult, back to her with the mental health stuff, just having people have too many opinions sometimes, because you can talk about me or like have an opinion about me, but then how she was mentioning about her mom, like sometimes they don't understand that what comes with everything. Like I can post my husband and then now he's involved in something that he didn't ask for, like he didn't ask to be on that platform. But I mean, it's been great too though, because I feel like I have a genuine relationship with all of the people who support me. Like whenever I do anything, I know that they're looking at me and they're like, oh my God, I'm genuinely so proud of you, because they've watched me grow from 20 years old to where I'm at now. I'm not gonna talk about age, but where I'm at now, and all the years and all the growth has been amazing. But it comes with a lot for sure.
Wow. I mean, how do all of you guys balance that sort of connection with your followers? Because they are very invested. They follow you, through the years. They know the ins and outs of your career and your life. Like, what is that aspect of being on social like?
I mean, I think I'm pretty authentic online, but it's probably just 20% of who I am privately. I think it's important for me to keep a line. Like I love to show what I do at work. I love to show a lot of like what my life entails. Yet my private life, for me, that has been like, unless somebody has decided to be on social, like my husband is on the social, so I feel comfortable with him. The friends I have that is on the social, feel comfortable with them. But I just know my friend group and my family from home haven't decided. So for me, that's my line, and like for me, that's not my dedication, but it's different for everybody. And I also think, I mean, I know because both me and my husband are social, that day where kids come along, that's also going to be a conversation. Do you share that? Do you not? And then where is that line? And they can't really answer. And I think you know best as a parent what works for you and your family. But yeah, I think it's important to, or it's been for me to have days where I'm just like not a like content creator, where I'm just me.
But you get to choose. You know, I think that's what's the great part about the platform, is that you get to choose what you want to show. And, you know.
I mean, like, my natural state is to always pull out my phone and capture things, but it's deciding, is this something that everybody needs to see, or is it something that I just want to remember myself?
I feel like that with a lot of the stuff that I do too, I feel like I've always tried to be very to just the makeup and the fashion as well, though. Whenever I do post, like, you hardly actually will see any like actual mom content. Like, I don't do like the mom vlogging and the mom, you know, I post my kids occasionally, but it's that barrier of I don't want opinions on how I'm parenting or how I'm raising my kids or how, like, because I feel like that's just a different conversation, but just trying to balance to make sure that people don't forget how I started, like what led me to where I'm at now, and it was the beauty and the fashion stuff.
Now, I know that you guys didn't necessarily start out with the goal of growing followers, but tell me a little bit about how, once you really sort of, you know, stepped into, okay, I'm going to turn this into an actual business, how did you go about sort of building an audience and growing that audience?
I think like it all starts with, you know, asking your audience what do they want to see. So, you know, the audience starts small no matter what. You have to start somewhere no matter what. And then as you see more people following, you're like, okay, well, I think I understand what my audience likes. Sometimes they won't like something, and that's okay. And you can pivot from that, and you can learn from that. And I think that's the key, is just continuously learning. And your audience also continuously evolves. So it's just growing and evolving with your audience and making sure that you're staying true to your brand and making sure that like whatever piece of content that you're creating actually accentuates what you're trying to, you know, give out.
I was doing a lot of cross promotion with, you know, other influencers and bloggers and brands. I feel like that really helped me grow a following, like just, you know, my friends who were doing the same things as me and like-minded individuals. We were, you know, traveling together, shooting together, and doing all that kinds of stuff. So I felt like that really helped my following grow a lot in an organic way.
I also find that works with brands. Like,
Yeah, and brands
like I
too,
feel like
for
when you
sure.
collaborate with other brands or just like
Yeah.
cross promote, lift each other up, and like if you find like-minded brands, doing like collaborations makes a lot of sense. Or even just like have an event or do something together, or like
Yeah.
share each other highlight.
Yeah.
It helps a lot.
Now, each of you is a brand owner. When it came time to, you know, launch your brands, how did you go about developing the social strategy? Like with Joja, when it was time for launch, like what was the, you know, initial social strategy, and how has that evolved over time?
We actually created the social platform way before we created a brand. We were a fitness community, just sharing that we were working out, me and my best friend, and just like sharing like the commitment of having someone to be in the gym with you, because for me that's always the hardest part, is feeling like motivated. So having someone else who were like accountable really helped, and we shared that, and we shared partner workouts and realized, oh, people also like to have accountability, and like they found other people, and then we were a social media platform for 3 or 4 years before we built a brand, and it actually was like, oh, here might be something, and the community asked for stuff. So we're like, oh, we could turn this into a brand. What was really hard was like, how do you then take that community, turning into a brand without fully forgetting the community, but also knowing like, hey, we are also a shoppable brand now. We aren't just this like the social media platform. So that's something we're still learning every day, and like each campaign is new and different, and we're pivoting constantly different. Like my partner just gave birth 3 weeks ago, so that is also like a whole new chapter we're adding on to the social media platform, and just like, you know, having a partner and everything has been super, super helpful. But yeah, no, I think for us it was showing more of the brand, taking people behind the scenes, and then taking the experience we've had in the industry of like, and finding other brands. We love what they do, feel inspired, love Pinterest, to get inspiration from mood boards and campaigns and shooting, and just, it was also really, really fun to be the creative director of shoots instead of being in front of the camera. So being behind the camera, while also being in front, was really challenging, but also super creative. And yeah, every day, every campaign is different, because we're still constantly in market. That's the fun thing about social media. You can really test the waters. Like I said, our first campaign came out way too young and way too like happy-go-lucky. And we're like, oh, that's not what they want. But that was kind of what our social media present has been. So realizing, okay, we're turning into a little bit more fashion. We need a different, more mature concept. But then how do we translate that in with our community? So we're still testing the waters. We've only been out for a year with the brand.
Yeah, I think with me it was definitely also who you're trying to target. Yeah. I know with like my cosmetic brand, it was a little bit more fun, more flirty. I was trying to target a specific age group, so I feel like that reflected on what my social media platform was going to look like. And then as far as like Active Faith, our clothing brand, it was a little bit more edgy, it was a little bit more mature, so it's definitely who we were trying to target for the actual brand. And also separating myself. I feel like I, as you know, the person, like I can sit there and create something that I think would be great because it's me, but I have to put myself outside of the box of like who the consumer is and who's actually going to be purchasing my brand. So that's kind of what strategy we used.
I was traveling and working with Revolve for a really long time, and my content was very heavily swimwear focused. So when I started my swimwear brand, I was like, okay, I want the girl who is shopping for my brand, the one who's gonna shop on Revolve. And like my inspiration was, you know, just traveling and like everything like that. So I feel like I got a ton of inspiration from Revolve, and now my brand is on Revolve. So my social strategy was that.
And on the least fun side, coming into any brand, I like to look at the data, because the data is what's going to really drive and give you an understanding of, you know, who your audience is, what kind of content is performing well, what's not performing well, and then once you kind of know like the age group and who they are, you can create that kind of content and like really shape that strategy of what you're trying to accomplish.
Now, are you guys working with a social media manager, or are you still doing everything on your own? How does that aspect of things work? Because a lot of times I think people feel that, especially since social media is so personal, they have to do everything themselves. So I'm kind of curious which you guys are doing at this moment.
I'm still heavily involved in every single aspect of everything that's coming out, but I do have my team for each brand. Just because when you are a brand yourself, as the influencer, the content creator, it's really hard to navigate every single business or every single Instagram, every single post, but everything still does get verified through me. But I had to, unfortunately, you get to a point where you have to let, you know, people just help, and that was also something that was really hard. Yeah, like that was also something very hard, because I feel like I'm always very like, this needs to look like this, or because I know what I want. I know what I want it to look like. I know what the vision is, but sometimes you have to step back and just let the people who are meant to do the job do the job.
I'm still doing mine. I'm still doing Natasha Swim. We will be pivoting to a social media manager, but I am in control of the Instagram and everything right now. It is becoming very overwhelming. So it's also just finding the right person that, you know, works with you and that can see your vision and art. It's really hard. So yeah, I'm doing everything.
Finding somebody who actually has love for your brand the way that you do, that's the hard part, for sure.
I think that's certainly key, is like the love and the passion. Just like coming in and like understanding, okay, it's not, okay, I'll just go back a little bit too. Social media managers, we do everything. So like, what don't we do? Like, influencers too, but like in the sense of we're content creators, we pull data, we, analyze, we make sure that, whatever we're producing actually like makes sense for the feed. And then we're taking all that data, we're like, all right, maybe it didn't work. And then we're like, okay, well, hey, by the way, like, what do you think about this piece of content? So then we have to pitch you and say, hey, like, is this something that you think would work on your feed? So, yeah, we have to be a little bit of a jack of all trades, I think, when you're...
And I've noticed, too, even when I did take that step back to just kind of allow people to help, my brand definitely elevated a lot more because I was so stuck on wanting things to be done a certain way that even you don't realize that by trying to do everything, you're not allowing your brand to grow because you're just stopping yourself from the full potential that it could be. Because now I have a team who's like, oh, what do you think about this? What do you think if we drop this? And it just feels nice to be able to walk in and be like, okay, I have ideas, I have a strategy. And it took some time though. I mean, I've had my brands for quite some time now, but when you do take that step, I did notice that it was a big change in my brand.
When
for
did
sure.
you start?
I mean, well, I have maybe like 3 or 4 years. I feel like that first or 2 years.
It's rough, yeah. I'm in the first 2 years.
Yeah, you're not gonna want anybody's opinion, or you know what your brand is, you know what you want for your brand. But then after that, I have 3 brands, so it was so overwhelming for me to still be a mom. I'm a mom of my 3rd baby, so I'm a wife. Like it was just a lot to focus on my brand. I wasn't giving it the full attention it deserved. And that's when I felt like I was just being a little selfish. I wasn't allowing myself to let the brand grow because I was so stuck with wanting it to look.
It's hard to balance all of that.
Mm-hmm.
I also think there's a huge difference in like my personal Instagrams, which is also kind of a brand in itself, that I control, but with Joja, our fitness brand, which is not just mine, it's me and my partners, we definitely got someone involved. Actually, one of our friends she was actually kind of involved early on, just a fan of us, and like in the sense of just like always would work out with us over the pandemic. She would help us a lot with just like coming up with concept because she's such a creative. We're like, wait, you should come work because you can't just like have fun with us. Like we should pay you to do this. So that has been super nice to be able to like hand it over to someone we fully trust. But we still meet, like we still shoot all the content. She gets in, she curates it, she presents it back. So it's still heavily involved in like all that stuff. But for me, you can't physically do everything. And the hardest part is to let go and ask for help.
Do you feel like that's also made you stronger and your brand stronger too by having that help and leveraging those people?
It grew our brand so much. I mean, we were kind of like stuck in like just having someone coming in with fresh ideas, someone coming in and like, because you have to be so consistent, we had to be so consistent on our own platform. So sometimes the neglect came to our brand because, oh, which one of us just posted last night or didn't we? So now having someone who makes sure that the content comes out like daily on time, even if we're on a plane or somewhere, at least took the stress away from the brand. Our own personal things, it's like a whole different story. But when it comes to the brand, you can't afford not being on it.
100%. And I also don't do it alone either. So I have an amazing team. So shout out to the team who helps us curate all this amazing content.
Now, how do you measure success? What does success with social media posts mean to you? Is it something that gets high engagement? Is it something that you feel resonates with your followers? Just on a personal level, how do you define success?
I think it's more of an overall. I think it's hard to say if one single post is successful. I mean, sometimes as a brand, you can see a straight correlation on your Shopify with a post and actually like what comes in. That feels super successful. But I think relying on each post to feel like, oh, that's measurement success is going to tear you down. Yeah. I think you have to look at the overall picture. I think you have to look at the long picture. And this is especially when it comes to brands that are like company you're building, or if you're designing and you want your brand out there, it's not an overnight thing. Like as much as things look like overnight successes and like you can go viral on TikTok nowadays and all these things, but it doesn't mean longevity. So for me, it's like it's a consistency of constantly going at it and just being like, okay, what is the time frame I'm giving myself? Okay, I am going to commit the next X amount of years to do this, because if I think it's just going to happen tomorrow, you might be very disappointed.
I mean, I think success is different for everybody. There isn't, like I said before, a one size fits all. Like some of us might be looking for engagement. Some of us might be looking for virality, which, again, not that easy, even though it may look like that. There's a lot that goes into it. Some might just want to be up there. Just the small goals, like, starting from scratch and getting yourself out there is huge. But yeah, like honestly, like it's setting those goals and then looking at it day to day and not going, okay, I don't have 1 million followers, or I don't have like this much engagement as I want. You have to start somewhere. So like you grow that audience and you grow that like passionate audience. I think that's where you find your success. Especially those where they're constantly cheering you on. I've seen like a lot of brands and a lot of people like grow from small to large. Like, I followed your brand as well, and it's been amazing to see like where you blossom to. Like it's huge. So it's having that like audience that supports you and being authentic to yourself and authentic to your brand, and you're eventually gonna get where you want to be.
Yeah, I feel like success for me is just having the consistency of, incoming jobs coming in, working with different brands that I have on my brand like wish list and stuff, and not necessarily like engagement or following or anything like that. And then, my own brand evolves. So I think if I'm like constantly feeling like I'm growing within myself and I'm getting consistent work and, evolving within myself, I feel like that's success.
And just starting it in general, like taking that step to actually start the business and do what you're doing.
Yeah, going after it.
Yeah, and going after it, because I feel like that everyone's going to have their own definition to what success is. And going in, trying to compare your success with someone else's, it's only going to...
That's like the last thing you should do.
It's not worth it.
Just like looking at yourself and seeing how you're like, not comparing yourself to yourself, but seeing that you're like feeling that you're like growing.
Like taking the initiative, starting the business and posting your first picture and doing your first campaign, like all that's just going to be evolving to overall success of what you're trying to accomplish.
I mean, honestly, it takes guts to start. So if you started, you're successful.
Definitely. Now, to that end, like, what have been some of your proudest moments or biggest milestones that you've reached in your careers that either came via social or, were involving social? Okay, Josephine, I'll start with you.
I think for me, taking a social platform that was just a fun idea to working out and sharing that, and like the day we sat with our first product, like we hadn't even sent it out, but just sitting with that product actually like at the 3PL fully packed and like was ready to like the first order, sending it out, and like we were building most of the brand in like my partner's kitchen. So it's just like sitting there and folding, and that sitting, once you go live, you're just like, is anyone going to care? And then that first order comes in, you're like, ah. That was a crazy high feeling.
Or even just like when you have your customer receive their first package and they are reviewing it and it's great feedback and it's all that hard work. It's like the smallest details of they just noticing like your packaging or like all those little things, just having that moment of having the consumer being like, oh my God, this is the best thing ever. I love it, or I'm obsessed. It's like, that it was worth all the stress, all the anxiety, and
like seeing
all the hard
people.
work,
Seeing the people like in my brand, in my swimwear, it was just like, wow, people, I was just always kind of self-conscious, like, are people gonna like it? Like, are they gonna see what I see? So I think just seeing other influencers, bloggers, customers, everybody, in the brand, and then seeing it grow from there was just very filling.
Yeah, I think like the bottom line though, even more than just growth, is just the sentiment. Like if you're seeing that everyone's like loving what you're doing, then I think that's a win.
Yeah.
Now, what's the biggest challenge of having a fashion business in 2023? Oh, the biggest challenge of having a fashion business in 2023. As a business owner, like what would you say is the hardest thing of doing it right now?
For us, maybe trying to stand out. I feel like that's been kind of a little bit of trying to make sure that you're doing something a little bit different, or you know, at the end of the day, we're all targeting, you know, a lot of the same people. It's just what's gonna set you apart from everything else.
I think for me, for us, the most challenging, I'm based in Miami and the manufacturers are here in LA, and we've had like a ton of delays with production and stuff, you know, from overseas. So that's been really challenging for me. And my brand was developed all over Zoom and all over the internet. So yeah, that's just been very difficult for me.
I mean, a lot of what they said as well, but I also think being, the world is so connected and social media is so worldwide, and you want to be a brand for everybody and the whole world, but we're also shipping out of LA right now, and like, so when a customer calls, hey, I ordered to Europe, what is that? And I'm like, oh, you know that thing to get it out custom? Yeah. And that's something you can't predict. You could put it on your website, but each country is so different. So realizing that people actually don't read the small letters, they don't research a lot of things, and then it's on you, but just taking it day by day and like try not grow bigger than you are. I think it's like holding back, because I'm sure like with being creative, it's so fun. Like, I mean, we have mood boards for the next 10 years. I was like, oh my God, we want to do this, this, and this, and this. And you almost like are already over the collection that's coming out because you've already designed like 2, 3 next. And you're like, but that's the new baby. That's a shiny toy. But taking it one step at a time, letting things develop, I think the hardest part is like patience, because we all come from like instant gratification kind of like lifestyle with likes on social media or a job that's out tomorrow, and knowing that like a business, that's a slow thing.
Yeah, and it even takes time for the customers to, you know, start buying your brand. And I thought instantly, like, you know, I'm like, why isn't anybody buying anything? But it took some time, and yeah, having the patience is super key.
And also just the overall how long it takes to create a product and create an actual piece was something that was really shocking for me in the beginning too, where I think we all assume like, oh, it's going to be a quick process, but it's like years. And like even with the cosmetic side of it, it takes like 2 to 3 years for me to be able to actually perfect like a makeup palette. And then when you launch it, you're just kind of like, okay, it's also quick when you're launching and you're doing that fun part, but the creating process is very time consuming. Like when you're doing, like we do everything cut and sew, so everything is from scratch, and it takes 2 years for us to even make like a crop top, you know, like it's very time consuming.
And the fits, the fit
Yes,
is,
the
it goes
fit
through
and
like 3, 4
making sure.
rounds of fitting to make sure
It fits
all
all body
done.
types
Yeah.
and everything's inclusive, and it's a lot.
Yeah, designing for women is definitely like a whole different ball game than designing for a lot of other things, because there's so many different versions of us. Not one of us is the same, but that's also what's so beautiful about it. And I also think realizing that not every product you make is for everybody, but making sure your overall brand has something to offer for most people.
For sure.
I mean, one of the things that I think is really interesting is that everybody is on social media, but there are still so many misconceptions about it. What would you guys say is just the biggest misconception that you've encountered in your careers about social media?
Probably back to the fact that if you work with social media and it's like your main platform for income and stuff, that it's not a real job.
Real job.
Yep.
Which it sometimes don't really feel like, because like you're so used to like the 9 to 5
Yeah.
Right.
conversation.
Or that it's easy, that, you know, it's a fast process that anybody can just kind of, I mean, everybody can do it, but it's like, who's going to be the person that actually does it and is being consistent and taking the time? Like, it's very, very time consuming, but it's also the fact that they think it just happens, you know?
Yeah, no one really understands like what really goes into every campaign that we build out, every single one of us, and how much work just goes into one post. You know, they think, oh, you just take a picture and you write something, right? That's all it is, right?
It's very time consuming.
Now, obviously you've all been in fashion for some time now. What would you say is the biggest change that you've seen in the fashion industry since you started?
I mean, now we're going 12 years back, so fashion was very separated. Like high fashion, if you talk to fashion houses, they were separated for the more commercial brands. It was very like elitist in a way of like what part of the circus you were allowed to be part of. Whereas social media has kind of opened the door for the mix of everything. It's opened the door that they allow every different kind of person inside, but also the brands are mixing. Nothing is so out of touch anymore, which I really appreciate.
Yeah, and allowing everybody to just be very creative to their own style. I feel like we all had a vision of what fashion was supposed to look like, and now everyone can kind of have their own version of what fashion really is.
Yeah, I feel like just being relatable, like fashion is so relatable now, whereas opposed to like 10 years ago, it wasn't, because you were just looking into magazines and stuff. So I love the diversity in it now.
I mean, now you can see yourself on there. Before it was like whatever they told you that you were supposed to see. So now you can see different body types and different personalities, everyone. It's so much more inclusive.
Absolutely. The door is wide open. Anyone can be a part of this industry now, and that's the wonderful thing. Now, when it comes to social, I feel like everyone has had their faux pas moment, their moment of the thing that they wish they hadn't posted, or the thing that they wish they had posted, but they didn't do it. Please tell me if there's one moment that you guys remember where it didn't go right, where there was a mistake made, where, you wish you could go back and tell yourself in the past, the lessons that you learned from that moment.
With me, I feel like in the beginning, it was hard understanding why it wasn't happening so quickly. And I guess still continuing to try, even though it wasn't happening as fast as maybe it was happening for somebody else. But looking back, I feel like I'm actually grateful that it wasn't such a quick transition, because I feel like sometimes when things happen so quickly, you don't know how to handle or what to do with the platform. Like if it would have happened really quick for me, like what would I have done? Would I have been like, oh my God, like how do I react to this? Or do I create a brand? Do I not? And I feel like that slow process of growth really helped me figure out what I wanted to do as a brand and what I wanted to come out with, and just give me that time to really know what I wanted to put out.
I mean, like, whenever you post anything, you really don't know how people are going to react. You're kind of like taking a chance. So whenever we post anything from either my personal or from the brand side, we're kind of testing to see, how people are going to respond, and you learn from it. And it's okay if you fail. It's okay if sometimes we post something that, we're not, it wasn't supposed to do that. Sorry. But it's just how do you grow from that, and like how do you turn it around? So like, what is your response? And I think that's like,
and not giving up, for sure. I feel like that's like a lot of us kind of will be like, I didn't do so good. Maybe I shouldn't have done that, and just try again. Maybe it just wasn't the time at that moment.
I feel like social's still changing, it's still evolving. What's it keeping you guys excited about it right now? What are you enjoying in the field at present?
I think how quickly you can target audiences now. I feel like even just with TikTok, it was like a big eye-opener of how fast like you can target, 1 million people overnight. It's just nice to see like just different platforms and seeing how everyone is now having an opportunity and a chance. I feel like we're going back to like that first like YouTube, Instagram era in the beginning, now with TikTok, and it's been kind of nice to like notice the difference with that platform.
I find that just like social media in general, it's just like, because like you said, it evolves so much, it keeps things so interesting. I'm never bored. Like every single day there's something different popping up, and I'm like, oh, well, let's try that. So I think like just that's something you can't really say even about like most people's day-to-day is like you can open any of the apps and discover something new.
I do like how raw it is turning into, because I feel like I started out with it being very like curated and perfect pictures, and it had to look like, magazine style photos, but I like love that it's just becoming like a little bit more raw and relatable. I like love that.
I also like that there's a lot of humor to it.
Yes, for sure.
Like I'm definitely personally very entertained when I'm on social. And I think it's really cool to see people, again, just having a fun time with the platforms.
And you're also seeing who's behind the brand. I feel like that's also been very important. You used to support brands that you didn't know who the creator was, or you didn't know who was behind the brand, and now that we have the platform to be able to show and who you're actually supporting and who's behind what you're purchasing and where you're spending your money, I feel like it's been really, really nice to be able to see that.
I think that's a great call out, because before it was like, oh, these are the photos, this is the brand. Now you get to actually see like who is behind the brand, who's like putting all this together, and there's a good amount of people.
Now, what do you guys consider good, engaging content? Like, who do you guys think is doing it right? Is there anyone you guys follow that you think is just great?
I think there's a lot of people who do it really right, and I think people are doing it for so many different reasons. Like, it also comes down to, is it people you're just fans of, like personally?
Yeah.
Or is it people you're like, you admire their brands? I'm not asking. I'm just saying, like,
Okay.
I'm like saying there's so many different versions of it, and like, I am extremely fascinated about people on TikTok because that's something I'm still learning. It's such a new platform. No, it's not new, but it still feels like ever evolving. Where the voices of TikTok is just, you always get, it changes weekly.
It's so opposite from what you were like told.
Yeah,
social media is supposed to be.
My whole career, I've been a 2D image. Now all of a sudden I have to talk to the camera, or like be present in a whole. That's like intimidating in a different way, but it's fun. And like, I love how like I think I would have loved it when I went to high school and just like could dance. And I used to do that in front of my webcam, recording just to the computer. But having a platform like TikTok, it's been really interesting to see the youth actually like going out with it. And then I love how like open and political it is as well. That it's not just, but there's actually like a social awareness that's changed. And I feel like that was missing for me with social media. It felt like for a hot second, it felt like a place for people to judge and stuff, but now people are actually using it to communicate with the rest of the world. And that's where I feel like it's super fascinating, because the world has gotten so open and we're not allowing things to just happen the same way anymore.
I think also with like the brands that you might be thinking are doing it the right way, it's just really taking what you can from every single brand that you may follow or that you may really like, and making that in like you being actually inspired and wanting to incorporate that into your brand, instead of just thinking that they're doing it the same, like the right way, and it's the only way. You know, just taking little bits and pieces from like, you know, people that you do follow and seeing like, okay, that's working for them. Like maybe I can incorporate that into my brand, or, you know, vice versa.
I mean, I think it's totally subjective too. Like, you know, we all follow specific people or specific brands and things that we want to emulate, or maybe there's something that, like you said, like humor, you know, that's something that we didn't feel okay posting about before, and now we can be so unscripted. And I think there's something to be said about that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Now, what are you guys excited for next in terms of your brands? What are you guys most sort of looking forward to for the rest of 2023?
Oh, mine is pretty mapped out. I'm just excited for the collections to come out. We're already talking 2024 because production takes so freaking long to like make and happen, and even then we feel like we're behind most things. But no, I think it's just exciting to constantly grow and constantly be part of seeing what the world evolves into, but also see, like, we definitely know that there's constantly new social media platforms showing up. I mean, AI is becoming a huge thing, so it's going to be interesting to see how that like changes everything, and what it does for design, what it does for how we communicate. And yeah, we're definitely keeping a close eye on AI and trying to like navigate what that whole situation is.
I mean, that is a scary situation. Scary, but also promising. It's weird.
ChatGPT, anyone?
I haven't tried it yet.
I tried to make it do my caption, and I was like, this is so cheesy.
For
It's
real.
like captions for back in like 2013 Instagram. I'm like, nah, okay, we're not there yet.
We can't be replaced yet.
I think for me, I was really focusing on direct to consumer, and this year for 2023, I'm really trying to get the brand into different e-commerce websites and different retailers. So that's what I'm really looking forward to this year and focusing on, as opposed to, well, obviously direct to consumer, but definitely other e-commerce websites, different retailers. So I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, just the overall growth. I feel like we've accomplished so much in these past couple years. So just seeing how much more and what limits we can really push ourselves to really elevate the brands.
And then on the SHEIN side, I'm just so excited to grow out my team, and we have so many amazing campaigns coming. I'm excited for all of you guys to see it. So,
Okay, well, I think we are fast approaching time. I don't know if anybody has a word of advice for the young designers in the room in 5 seconds, but if there is.
If you're not on social, get on social.
don't be afraid.
Never
it's
give
okay.
up.
Take advantage of being able to be on the platform and use it to your advantage. Like really just jump on there. If you're thinking about it, don't think about it and just do it.
Never give up, just keep going. Literally, you'll be broken down so many different times, but that was always pushing me to go further.
And even if you fail, you're going to learn from it. Honestly, like failing is good.
Okay, thank you guys so much. Please give me Blaze.